Hello Year 4, I hope you're all alright. I am not going to spend ages talking this morning, but I just wanted to let you know that on Friday I am going to be posting some pictures on Facebook, and the pictures are going to be of things that you've been up to at home. So if you have done anything that you're particularly proud of, anything that you would like to share with the rest of your class, then please send it to me on an email. If you've sent me something already, I will probably send you an email to say, would you mind if I shared it on Facebook? And then everyone can see what you've been up to. I'm going to start reading today from page 108 where we were up to. And we got to the part where Lucretia Cutter got to Humphrey and Pickering's house, and we didn't really know what she was there for. So today, hopefully, we'll find out what she's there for. Well, we will find out what she's there for. Page 108 if you're following along at home. My name is Lucretia Cutter. The woman lifted her chin as if she expected the cousins to have heard of her. Humphrey stared blankly back at her and looked at Pickering, who obviously hadn't heard of her either. Look, you have something that I want, she said. You bet I have. Humphrey sucked in his gut and puffed out his chest. I'm prepared to pay you, Lucretia Cutter said. Handsomely. Go on, Pickering said. There have been reports of exotic beetles in this part of the city. Pickering's eyes narrowed. I haven't seen any beetles. She held out the 3 beetles again. Really? Because I believe you sent these to the Health and Safety Department of the council. There are no beetles here, Pickering insisted. Mr. Risk, I'm not from the council. I'm a coleopterist. What have feet got to do with anything? Humphrey asked. Not a chiropodist, a coleopterist, she hissed. A collector and studier of beetles. I've been tracking a group of rare arthropods that escaped from my laboratory several years ago. She held up the lifeless bodies again. These beetles have DNA that matches the missing ones, and I believe that I've finally found their habitat. And it's here. She leant forward hungrily. Isn't it? Humphrey nodded, grinning. Do you want to see my bedroom? Pickering pulled him backwards into the hallway. Stop nodding like a fool, he hissed. This could be a trap. Mr. Risk, please, this is not a trap. It is a simple business transaction. She held out a glossy black rectangle. Here is my card. Humphrey and Pickering both lurched for it, but Humphrey grabbed it first, and Pickering had to stop himself from knocking into Lucretia Cutter by grabbing the door frame. The tip of his nose halted a millimetre from a sparkling black brooch pinned to the lapel of her lab coat and tethered by a fine platinum chain. It's alive! Pickering squealed as the brooch slowly travelled across Lucretia Cutter's coat. It's a stag beetle encrusted with diamonds. Black diamonds are rare, but stags are even rarer now. Lucretia Cutter ran her finger over the glistening black stones, and the beetle stopped moving. It's my take on a Makesh, and it's priceless. A what? A Makesh. Bejewelled beetles. A living brooch from Mexico. Isn't it stunning? Just going to pause there for 1 second. If you're interested in what it is that I'm talking about in the story here, Google a Makesh. It is spelt Maqueech, a Makesh. Oh, it's lovely, Pickering wrinkled his nose. It's a pity the exotic beetles aren't on your premises. She cocked her head and curled her gilded top lip. Because I pay by the insect. You want to buy them? Pickering asked, stunned. Yes. All of them? Humphrey couldn't believe what he was hearing. Yes, all of them. But there's thousands, Humphrey marvelled. Are there? How interesting. Lucretia Cutter tipped her head back, exposing her perfect neck. They must have bred. She sighed and then swooped close to Humphrey. Are they exhibiting any unusual behaviour? He stuttered. She thrust her sticks through the door frame and swung herself forwards. "Why don't you show me?" "No," Pickering shrieked, barring her path. "There's nothing for you to see here." The image of a boy tied to a chair, covered with cranberry sauce, flashed into Humphrey's head, and he joined Pickering to block the hallway. Lucretia Cutter reared up threateningly, suddenly seeming impossibly tall. "Let me in!" "I'm sorry, you have to leave now. Bye-bye," Pickering shouted in a voice filled with terror. "Thank you for your visit." "Suit yourself," Lucretia Cutter said angrily, backing out of the doorway. "You have my card. I'll give you a week to think about it." As she turned back to her car, two men dressed in black got out. One crossed the road to provide an escort for Lucretia Cutter, and the other held the car door open. Pickering stared at them. "They look like two men I chased out of your room last week." Darkus scrambled back through the forest of furniture as fast as he could. Baxter clung on tightly to his shoulder as he threw himself over the wall and pelted up the stairs to Uncle Max's living room, falling to his knees in front of the window. The car was still there. Darkus lifted the latch and slid the window open. He heard a subdued pop. The chauffeur he'd seen earlier at the museum was opening a rear car door. A doll-like girl stepped out, wearing a sleeveless black dress with a stiffened hood that framed silver curls piled high on her head. The dress was pulled tightly in at the waist, the skirt exploding like a parachute, hanging just above her knees. She was wearing white leather gloves, a belt and ballet pumps, and a white triangular handbag swung from her elbow as she crossed the road to the newsagent's. As she walked, she held her left arm up like a teapot spout and swung her hips from side to side. Forgetting the window was wide open, Darkus snorted with laughter, and the girl looked up. He froze, a broad grin plastered on his face. The girl raised her gloved hand to her lips and blew him a kiss before flouncing through Mr. Patel's shop door. Darkus felt himself grow hot. What did she do that for? He wondered crossly, leaning out of the window as far as he could. But the girl was inside the shop now. Let me show you the picture. He could hear murmuring from Humphrey and Pickering's doorstep, but he couldn't make out anything they were saying. He leant out as far as he dared to see if it made any difference. A silvery laugh startled him. The girl was back, standing in the middle of the road and sucking a lollipop. Looking up at him, she took a small white card from her handbag, waved it at him and let it drop to the ground, returning to the car without a backward glance. "Wait!" Humphrey's voice boomed. "What would you do with all of those beetles?" Darkus glanced down. Lucretia Cutter was looking back over his shoulder at the cousins, a cruel smile twisting her gold lips. "Kill them, Mr. Gamble. Kill them all, and once they're dead, I'll stick pins in the special ones and add them to my personal collection." "Aw, that's not very nice, is it? She doesn't sound like a very nice lady to me." Leaning forward over her canes, she swung away, ignoring the hand of her bodyguard, her elbows stuck up at the right angles like legs of a praying mantis, her black skirt snaking behind her like a body of a centipede. "I wonder what's wrong with her legs," he thought, giving an involuntary shiver as he watched her move, a feeling of dread like a cold mist settling over his stomach. "What do you think she's doing here, Baxter?" Darkus looked over his shoulder. Baxter was on the coffee table, his elytra flickering. "What are you doing? Are you hiding?" He picked up Baxter, holding him to his chest and stroking his elytra. "I won't let her hurt you." He stared down into the street. The room Dad had disappeared from had that woman's name above the door. Uncle Max had called her a villain, and now she was here for the beetles. Well, she couldn't have them. Darkus vowed silently that he would stop her, and the men living next door, from hurting the amazing insects. He was certain that that's what his dad would do. Tomorrow at school, he'd tell Virginia and Bertolt about the museum and the beetles and ask them to help him. The engine roared, and Darkus watched as Lucretia Cutter's vehicle crawled down the street like a mechanical Scarab. Oh, I'm not sure what that means. I'll have to Google that once I finish reading. Scarab. Where are we going? Bertolt asked nervously as Darkus pulled him up onto the shed roof. You'll see, Darkus said. Virginia, give him a leg up. Bertolt scrambled up on top of the roof of the shed, squealing when his shoe got stuck on the guttering. This way, Darkus said, running lightly along to the wall and pulling himself up. He sat on the top, dangling his legs, and offered Bertolt his hand. He'd spent the day at school pretending to feel ill. Uncle Max had said he could have a second day off to make their story more believable, but Darkus had wanted to go back. He was desperate to see Bertolt and Virginia. His only worry was being spotted by Pickering and Humphrey on his way to school. So he'd borrowed Uncle Max's bobble hat and a long scarf from the coat stand in the hall and covered his head and face. He checked the coast was clear before slipping out onto the street and did his best impression of one of the clones, hunching his shoulders and strutting into school. At the end of school, he invited Virginia and Bertolt to come back to Uncle Max's, keeping the reasons as mysterious as he could. He was worried that if he told them the truth, they'd laugh at him, or worse, pity him for making up such a crazy story. He needed them to see for themselves, and then perhaps they'd help him. I can't believe you persuaded me to do this, Bertolt grumbled, slowly pulling himself along the roof on his bottom, trying not to look down. Darkus grabbed his arm and hoiked him up onto the wall. He pointed down into the yard next door. Take a look at that. Bertolt's mouth dropped open. What is it? Virginia asked, pulling himself up onto the other side of Darkus. Holy guacamole! Would you look at that? I call it the furniture forest, Darkus said grandly. What are you, a poet? Virginia laughed, throwing her legs over the wall. Come on, what are you waiting for? Virginia, Bertolt said. That's trespassing. Whoops, said Virginia, smiling at Bertolt as she let go of the wall and dropped on top of a wardrobe. Follow me. Darkus swung himself so that his feet hit the vertical sofa, and he slid down the cushion, disappearing into the warren. He waited under the table for Virginia and Bertolt, who soon scrambled in and sat with him in a huddle. I'm not sure that this is a good idea, Bertolt whispered, looking around nervously. We don't know who lives here. I do, Darkus said. Are they friendly? Bertolt asked hopefully. Not exactly, Darkus changed the subject. Look, I've brought you here because I need your help. Is it to do with your dad? Virginia asked. Darkus nodded. I knew it. Some stuff has happened, and I don't know what it all means yet, but I think my dad's disappearance has something to do with this. He slid the backpack off his back and pulled out Baxter's jam jar. What is that? Bertolt exclaimed, leaning forward. Whoa, where did you get that rhinoceros beetle that big? Where did you get a rhinoceros beetle that big? Virginia knelt and grabbed the jar from Darkus, lifting it up to eye level. He's magnificent! How do you know that? Know what? Virginia tapped the glass jar lightly with her fingertip. That Baxter is a rhinoceros beetle. Darkus was impressed. I know lots of things, Virginia smiled, but I also have 3 brothers, and Sean is big into bugs. He's got 2 stick insects, a tarantula, and a whole shelf of DVDs about insects. He'd suck a bucket full of lemons to get his hands on a beetle this big. Darkus took the jar back from her and unscrewed the lid. I found him the day before yesterday. He tipped the jar gently. Everybody, meet Baxter, he said, as the rhinoceros beetle crawled out of the jar and onto his hand. Baxter, this is Bertolt and this is Virginia. Does it bite? Bertolt asked, transfixed. Don't be an idiot, Virginia shoved him. Rhinoceros beetles eat fruit and tree sap. Well, I don't know that, do I? Bertolt huffed. He looked at Darkus. I don't understand. What has the beetle got to do with your dad's disappearance? I'm going to stop there. I'm going to finish there for today, and I'll finish the rest of that little part on Thursday. Don't forget to send me what you've been up to so I can share it on Facebook on Friday. See you soon. Bye.